We now go to Dr. Ami Bera of California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ambassador Nuland and Mr. Glazer. You touched on the propaganda machine that's coming out of Russia and Moscow and the control of media and information, which, if we look back at history, is critical, and particularly history in this part of Eastern Europe, going back to World War II, going back to the Cold War. One mechanism to control the masses and one mechanism to get people fighting against each other is that propaganda machine and that control of the free flow of information. I was glad to hear that we are helping the Ukrainian people use social media. The Twitter account was United Ukraine, the hashtag. So what are some other mechanisms that we're doing to help the Ukrainian people, empower them, and get access to credible information?
Well, as you mentioned a couple of them, so putting forward our own positive information, helping them to get information translated not just in Ukrainian but in Russian, now to counteract all of this. We're supporting the government's media center so that they can get positive decisions on decentralization and constitutional reform out in Russian, in Ukrainian, in English as quickly as possible. We are also supporting independent media and particularly digital media because that's harder to take down. We support digital media in Russia and in Ukraine. It was very effective during the Maidan period in getting instant communications. But as I said at the beginning, it's very, very difficult in an environment where Russia's taking down the infrastructure.
Right. And a lot of that infrastructure may not have existed in the first place, but in terms of cell phone capabilities and so forth and using handheld devices, have they taken that infrastructure down as well?
Well, it's primarily the TV capacity, which is where the vast majority of Eastern Ukrainians get their news. So that's been the problem. But the government, in its operations to liberate entities, has put a priority on liberating TV towers, and they did get 2 back just in the last week. But as you know, when truth is optional, it's difficult. So our truth and their truth is what we need to get out.
So we certainly, under Chairman Royce's leadership, are very supportive of increasing our ability, Radio Free Europe and other capabilities to get information out and so forth. The other thing that I find disturbing, a month ago, again on this trend of propaganda and turning people against each other, I found the anti-Semitic flyers that were distributed incredibly reprehensible and very worrisome, given the history. Some of the worst tragedies of the Holocaust occurred in Ukraine, and to really look at some of these flyers, and they very much are reminiscent, asking members of a large and vibrant Ukrainian Jewish community to register or face deportation, just rings of some trends that are worrisome. I'm glad that the administration and Secretary Kerry came out very strongly against these. And while we don't know where they came from, it is actions like that I find worrisome. Have we seen other trends against not just the Ukrainian Jewish population, but many folks in my community fled Russia, fled Ukraine in search of religious freedoms and settled in the Sacramento area? Are we seeing other forms of propaganda or hate?
We are, not just in Crimea against all minority communities. I can give you some things here. On April 22nd, the Holocaust Memorial in Sevastopol was sprayed with a red hammer and sickle. On the Slavyansk TV tower that was taken over, began broadcasting anti-Semitic programming. We've had Roma fleeing, particularly from Slavyansk, but other parts of eastern Ukraine, under threats of intimidation. There have been death threats against the chief rabbi of Crimea, who is now fled. Pro-Russian thugs kidnapped priests of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church in Crimea, interrogated them. So it is bad. It is bad.
So just in the few remaining moments, given the history and some of the tragedy and atrocities that have taken place in Ukraine during the Holocaust, we have to be very vigilant and standing with us. And I think on behalf of this entire body, we find those acts reprehensible and unacceptable.